Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So it's almost that time of year again. Halloween is coming around the corner in a week or two. So in this video I'd like to show you how you can make this cool looking Halloween mummy decoration just out of some scrap wood. So I started off by doing a basic sketch to get an idea of how I'm going to make this. Pretty basic, 2 eyes, a bit of a face, and then it's wrapped up in bandages. So to make it, I'm going to use this scrap piece of chipboard. You can use any board of wood really, it doesn't really matter. So I'm using a ruler here just to find a center point, because when I draw the shape I want it to be roughly symmetrical. So I used the top of a tin to draw around to make the head, and that's in the center right at the top, so I can get the maximum amount of wood out of this piece. And then again with the ruler I can draw 2 lines down for the neck, tapering inward slightly. And now I'm establishing where the shoulders are going to be with the square, and where I want the shoulders to end. You don't need to do this, you could just freehand draw it. I just use these lines to help me to get that shape. And that line is where I want the arms to end, and then it go down into the legs, so I can just follow that curve to the lines and then go down for the legs to the bottom, and the same on the other side. You might want to make your mummy a little bit narrower. I think mine was a bit too wide, looks a bit bulky, but I think it still looks good. So now I'm going around it with a marker pen so that it's easier for me to cut out the shape with the jigsaw in a moment. And now I'm just drawing on the lines for where the bandages are going to go and the opening for the face. And this doesn't have to be particularly accurate. We just want to create an illusion of bandages on wood. And again using the marker pen to draw in these lines once I was happy with them. So for the eyes, I'm just using a washer to draw around. The one eye is slightly underneath the bandages. And then a smaller washer for the inner part of the eye. Now to cut the shape out, I'm using the jigsaw here. Just taking it slow and following those curves. Now I want to add a round over. I've got a round over bit in my router, and I'm just going to round over front and back to make it nice and rounded and smooth. You could just sand it by hand, you don't need to do this part. Now I'm going to use a straight bit in the router, and I'm going to set it to roughly half the depth of the chipboard, and this is to route out those lines that I drew earlier for the bandages. So this will create some texture, and it will allow for me to add some string into these grooves later on. And again, this is not something you need to do. You could just paint the lines on. Then I could remove all the dust and chips. Now I want to seal the chipboard so that it doesn't take forever to paint. So I've got some PVA glue and I'm going to water it down, add this to the chipboard, let it dry, and that will just seal it a little bit and make it easier to paint later on. I wanted to add a piece of wood at the back as a support. So this is a scrap of pine, and I'm just rounding over the edges before I add it to the back of the shape. I drilled a few pilot holes. And then I added some contact adhesive. And this will just make sure that it doesn't break easily. This should add lots of rigidity to the structure. And then I could add some screws. This will also give me something to screw into for the base later on. Now for the base, I've got an offcut of plywood. I think it's about 18mm thick. And again, I'm just going to round over the edges. And then just give it a quick sanding down. Now to add the mummy to the base, I'm just using a ruler here to centralise everything. And then I can draw around the bottom part. And I'm going to be adding 2 screws to the area where I added that piece of pine. Again, 2 pilot holes. And then I can add the 2 screws to give a nice solid connection. And I added a little bit of glue too. I'm countersinking here because I want them to sit flush with the base, the heads of the screws, so they don't stick out. And this was the easiest way I could think of doing this. Putting the screws in first, using my workbench, opening up the 2 sides and then drilling from underneath. And that gave a really solid fixing. So now for painting, I've got some white emulsion water-based paint. All the paints I'm using are water-based for this project. So I gave it 2 coats of the white emulsion, front and back, and used a tiny brush to get into all those grooves. And then I painted the whites of the eyes. For the base, I decided to go with like a dark blue colour. Wasn't sure what colour to go for, but it doesn't really matter. And I added 2 coats. Now for the dark black part of the face and then the black part of the eyes. These small detail brushes really come in handy on projects like this when you need to get into really awkward spots. Now for the string, I've got this little ball of string and I want to add this into those grooves that I routed out earlier. So I'm adding wood glue down into the grooves, and then I can offer up a piece of the string and cut it to length, leaving some excess so I can trim that back later on. And then I just need to push the string down into those grooves and let the glue dry. So I have many Halloween projects on my channel. If you're interested in other Halloween projects like this one, I'll leave links to those videos in the description box of this video. So adding this string, I just thought it'd offer a bit more texture, make it look a bit more interesting. For the base, I added some blue glitter paint, and this is like glittery paint with a bit of glue added so it sticks, just to make it all look a bit more interesting. And then I could nip off the ends of that string once the glue was dry. And I also added some silver glitter paint to the bandages, again just to make it look a bit more interesting. Now I wanted to add some little felt pads to the bottom so that when it goes onto a piece of furniture it doesn't scratch the surface of the furniture. And finally I could give it a coat of spray varnish just to seal everything off and give it some protection. And that was the project all done. Okay, so that's about it for this video. I had fun making this. I think it looks pretty good too, and I've used up a few more scrap bits of wood that I had lying around in the shed. So if you did find this video useful, please remember to like and also consider subscribing for more DIY related videos. Happy Halloween, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.